has America decided to become great again at the world's cost?
We're putting America first and we are making America great again. Very simple. We are making America great again.
Have they chosen a new playbook where they have decided it is going to be power over rules? And is the globe ready for the consequences that are coming along? What US is doing is not about sanctions or oil. It is about how it has decided to use economic power, energy security, and also its strength to reorder the whole globe under the banner of making America great again. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and today we are going to talk about three incidents which are seemingly unrelated, but they will give you a clear insight into that how US has decided to change a rule-based global order into a power-oriented one, coercion-oriented one, and threatening one. So let us begin with understanding that what are the incidents that are there which we are talking about. So recently, three such incidents that have taken place across the globe, and the common point therein has been US. So when we talk about these three incidents, the first one has been from the legislative end, where we see legislative coercion, where Donald Trump has given affirmation to further sanction on buying Russian oil, where there is expected the tariff might go up to 500%, and definitely the target here will be India, China and Brazil. This was not just one incident, there was another incident which comes in from yet another domain where we get to see physical enforcement, where US is not using weapons such as tariffs, such as legislative means. Rather, they have gone on out and they have seized a oil tanker, Russian oil tanker, which was carrying Venezuelan oil. Now, this is something which can be easily marked as an act of war, which rise at the threat of World War III, which can bring in Russia and US in front of each other, but US is not scared of by that. And on addition, US has gone and added a third incidence of institutional withdrawal, where it has announced not one, not two, not three, but withdrawal from 66 international organizations, and that means they are retreating from all such global cooperation which comes from these international organizations. Most of them are UN related agencies, but a high point here for us, they have withdrawn from International Solar Alliance as well. This is where we get to see that India remains in the very circle of the change that US is trying to bring, be it through tariffs, be it through physical enforcement, or through the institutional withdrawal. All to ensure that whatever is the primary interest, US is going to follow that. And the reason that it matters the most as of now is the fact that this shows us that these actions which are centered across law, force and institution, these are not random, these are not sporadic, these are not unrelated. Rather, they are a systematic recalibration where US is shifting by the means of all these actions and changing how the global order operates. It has come away from hegemonic behavior, but it was instilled based upon institutions. Now they have come out on open, where they do not want to be associated as an entity tied with the institution, be it threatening NATO, be it threatening and withdrawing from 66 international institutions that we are talking about, and whatnot. Now, first let us start with understanding that what exactly is changing. What is the change that I am pointing to? And then we can understand the consequences and how that should be dealt as well. So when we are talking about the change in front of us, you will get to see the earlier mode in which US was operating. It still wanted its influence to exist, but that influence was exercised via institutions, via norms, and making sure that countries are on the table and consensus building. If there was enforcement required, then that enforcement was also mediated by multilateral legitimacy. That means they wanted partners on the table on their end to give it the illusion of legitimacy at least. But now that we get to see, we are seeing the influence that US wants. It is through the domestic law, which will have an effect beyond its territory. They are passing a bill for posing up 500 plus tariff on Russian oil buying countries. So this law has rarely anything to do with the domestic territory, but it is going to have impact far and beyond, up and until Asia, most importantly for India and China in this continent. They are using tariffs and market access as a tool, as a leverage, as a strategic weapon through which they are distorting and forcing countries into their own ways. And where both of these are not working, they do have their physical enforcement through military approach, through naval approach, what we have seen in Venezuela, how US is threatening to take up Greenland, how US has gone ahead and seized the oil tanker, and all of this together, as I discussed, it is marking a structural transition. This is not something randomly that is happening. It is showing that when we are talking about leadership, yes, it was hegemonic in behavior, but now it has come to coercion, forceful management to get things the way they want. And this is showing that we are not just going away from multilateralism to unilateralism. This is also showing that to maintain that unilateralism, no rule-based order is being looked out for. Power is the main tool that is being utilized here. So when we are talking about this active change, especially when we are talking about countries such as US, which has far and beyond consequences in anything it does, then we have to see the change that lies in front of us, how it is going to impact everything that is coming along. And when we are talking about how it is being done, as I pointed out, they are using economic coercion as a default strategy. They are focusing on sanctions, and these sanctions are not limited to adversaries or any prohibited activities. They are happily targeting their strategic partners, example India. They want a particular economic behavior, they are okay with third country transactions, and they are targeting everything that can mold things their way. For example, we have seen already secondary sanctions discipline partners where they have asked India to turn their own way. We have seen that tariffs are being used as punishment. For example, when we talk about China and US levied their tariffs, the reason US gave was the misuse that China is doing and how they are facilitating drug and its related smuggling in US. And every trade is being converted into a compliance leverage. So as a result, we are seeing that all the economic policy is not just related to economics, it is a foreign policy also, which will be used as an enforcement tool, not something that will kept for exceptional conditions. Similarly, other pillars of these change that you get to see is about physically backing the economic pressure. For example, the tanker seizure that we have seen, that shows that if their sanctions are lacking, then they can be backed by naval power. Commercial shipping will be treated as a strategic infrastructure, and maritime law has been subordinated as per the sanctions logic. All we get to see that US has decided to be the bully in the backyard and use all the means available for the same, including institutional exit as well. So on this end, we will be moving towards understanding the consequences in front of us, starting with the first and foremost consequence that lies right in front of us is the fragmentation, breaking down of the global economic order. What we are getting to see that the markets are no more neutral, there is no predictability that remains with the trade rules, and there is absolute separation between geopolitics and economics that has gone. This has become one and the same thing. So if your country is not going the way, you will drop them out as strategic partner. You will prioritize that their foreign policy should also coincide with their economic policy. A good example here is all the countries importing from Russian oil, they are legally facing sanctions, and these sanctions are not coming from any multilateral agency. WTO principles have been violated since the day President Donald Trump stepped into his office, and this has weakened the trade, which also has weakened the enforcement power or the power in general WTO held. So this is also marking the end of multilateralism. It is also marking the end of global rule-based power. And as a result, we are getting to see that supply chains are being reorganized, they remain vulnerable, there is no commitment or predictability, and this all is happening for political safety. If we are talking about trade blocks, any trade blocks, they are replacing open global markets. Why? Because the regional partners or the partners in usual would like to hold on to themselves rather than rely on open global markets. A very good example here is India signing FTAs. India does not want to compromise its economic stability, and that is why, to ensure the regular exports and the export competitiveness, they are entering into FTAs and they are diversifying their market access rather than being dependent on global market. And this is also resulting into sacrifice of efficiency for any sort of strategic leverage. This is not all. In terms of consequences, we are also getting to see that energy markets are especially that are being militarized, because wherever energy is present, in form of oil, in form of rare earth minerals, in form of resources, we get to see that they are governed by naval reach, they are being governed by insurance regimes and financial compliance. So wherever the energy will flow, all of this will be used to govern it. That we have seen in the tanker seizure itself. Not just that, capture of Venezuela, Venezuelan president. Here we get to see US does not have any interest in the democracy. It has interest in the largest reserve of oil in the world, which is present in Venezuela. So energy transport has also become a security issue. Shipping lanes have become strategic infrastructure and they are geopolitical choke points. Because if you talk about Atlantic region, which is an important movement, commercial, even if not strategic, commercial movement shipping lane, that has been a capture there shows that it can be used for geopolitical motives, and this will have consequences. It will result in increased risk premiums, it will result in parallel energy systems which will emerge, and it will also erode the credit worthiness that exists in the energy market, the predictability, the volatility that is present in the energy market. And furthermore, energy markets will also diverge, move regionally just like other trade rather than going globally, so as to ensure some predictability and some continuance there. In terms of consequences, when we are talking about, we might also get to see in coming times hollowing out of especially global institutions, and the mark has started with this withdrawal, because such a withdrawal by such a big country shows that in coming times we might see funding gaps, we might see lack of consensus, we might see reduced authority and any kind of incentive that could have come with compliance. If there is no incentive to comply, then countries would not be interested, and as a result we will be seeing that institutions will continue based on procedure rules, but they do not have any substance existing. Other than that, rules will exist, but there will be no enforcement. Then what is the point of rules? What are the rules doing in WTO if WTO is not functional at all? It's better it doesn't exist. If UN and the agencies cannot do the work they are doing, then there is no point of existing. And the biggest loss because of this will happen to the developing countries, the smaller nation, because they will lose the protective buffer they have, the bargaining power they have, the seat on the table they have with the developed and bigger nation, and bigger nations are going to use this to their advantage, just like US what it did with Nigeria. So what we will get to see in the coming times is going to be a ghost of global governance, where it might be present, but the strength and effectiveness of it will be in question for the longest time. Of all the consequences that we have been discussing, the biggest one would be a vacuum that we get to see in terms of competitive powers. This will also give chances for external powers to step in, be it the regional powers, be it the regional blocs. For example, European Union might have a chance to expand their regulatory influence. China has already started selectively being present in certain institutions, be it SCO, be it G20, be it BRICS. But this will also give space for middle powers, especially India, so that they can form issue-based coalitions and fill up this vacuum with their bargaining chip, with their bargaining power. But the problem is, in the longest time, we are not seeing a replacement for US coming, be it in terms of funding, be it in terms of hegemony that it had, be it in terms of consensus building. And this will ensure that governance, even if it exists, it will remain fragmented and it will be continuously contested by other powers, which will result in overlapping rules, which will result in chaos, and again, there will be multipolarity but no coordination at all. And all of this leaves a huge impact on India because the most vulnerability comes in terms of energy. Because we are still buying Russian oil in huge quantity. Russia remains one of the biggest exporters of oil to us, and it has helped in keeping our inflation moderate and relieving the fiscal stress. If another round of secondary sanctions come in and the tariffs are placed, we are not going to be threatened in just terms of energy security, but also the banking channels, insurance cover, and the shipping access we have. It is going to have a direct impact on our strategic autonomy also. It is going to pressure, this tariff is going to pressure us to align, and this is going to undermine our autonomy. And the way US has been behaving shows us that there is no limitation to the tariffs, but there are other means that they can resort to. And that is what that will make very difficult for us to balance US, who is a strategic partner important for defense imports, and Russia, who has been an all-time ally for us. And this choice will be always framed as a loyalty test, and India would have to look into that, how they can maintain their economic rationality, because that will become harder with time, especially with the geopolitical compliance that is required in the fast changing global order, because US is hell-bent upon making America great again. Now on this note, I'll be just drawing the larger picture in the end, showing you that as of now we are seeing that power is not going to be exercised in one form, it is going to be exercised in all the ways possible, be it through market, be it through legislation, be it through selective disengagement. But at the same time, this transition is challenging, but it also leaves a vacuum. So this is where US withdrawing from global leadership is not a redefining movement, it is rather about control than coordination. India would have to figure out a way, globe has to figure out a way in terms of consequences. What are your thoughts on this? What can be done? What are the ways this can be addressed? Let me know in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.